All right, we are live on the Oasis Mental Health Show, episode 5. We have our clinical director, Alex Waitt, here. Alex, what's up?
Very happy to be here today. I appreciate you creating the space for us to talk a little bit today. There's a lot of stuff going on, and so it's nice to be able to get together and talk through some different things that we're all kind of responding to.
Yeah, so this will be our first current event episode, I guess. So today we got together to talk a little bit about the Simone Biles incident, her withdrawing from the Olympics, and kind of how everybody's been reacting to that in the media, on social media, on traditional media, like on the news and things like that. A lot of misinformation going around about that, and just why she withdrawed, what factors go into that, what kind of stressors she was under, and things like that. So, Alex, having you on as an LPC, I think is going to provide some valuable insight into that. So I'll just real quick go over kind of the situation as it stands right now. I think this happened Thursday, so I think 3 days ago.
I believe.
3 days ago it happened. Okay. So Simone Biles, she is the most decorated American gymnast and regarded by many in the sport to be one of the greatest of all time. She withdrew from the Olympic team final and individual all-around competition in Tokyo. Following the competition, she cited her mental health as the reason for the withdrawal. And again, like we said, this sparked a lot of controversy. People were comparing to it, be like, what if Tom Brady left the Super Bowl? What if LeBron left the finals? And there was a lot of, and those were popular arguments against Biles and why she withdrew. And initial reactions for everybody is really outraged, like, you're the best in the world. You bedazzle a goat on your uniform. How are you dropping out of the Olympics on the world's biggest stage? And I mean, personally, I kind of agreed with it just when it first came out. I didn't know what she's really been through. I just knew she was the greatest gymnast that we had, and I was a little bit upset that she would just kind of drop out in the Olympics. Did you? I don't know how in tune you were that into Alex in real time, but did you kind of
I was
look
very
into
in
it?
tune. I was very in tune with it, and I was. It's maybe counter to culturally how everyone else responded, but I was kind of glad. I was like, good for her. I was really pleased actually. I think there's a part of me that's sad because I know the role and contribution she makes to the American gymnastics team, especially in international competitions. And at the same time, it's like this is someone who's made a decision for themselves, and who am I as a stranger to react to that and be like, you shouldn't have done that? Like, she's not a friend, she's not a family member, and I think a part of why people choose to react that way is feeling like someone as decorated and who's made such a contribution as she had, they sometimes feel like family, even if we've not known them. But it's like we have no idea who Simone Biles is outside of what she's chosen to share with us. And so I think it feels intense and it feels like someone's wronging us when they make a decision like that. And at the same time, I just felt really comforted in knowing that, like, this is someone who really knows themselves and someone who's willing to take a stand for themselves and advocate for themselves. I think a decision like this is so heavy and intense. And I can't imagine the amount of courage that it takes for someone to be able to sit there and face the criticism and know that and because a part of that yourself is, from her perspective, is worrying about how other people are going to react to it, and to set aside worrying about how everyone else is going to react to it and to really make a decision for yourself. It's like one of the most important things that you can learn to do as a person. And so for me, I was really pleased, and I felt really good about that, despite my reaction being a little bit different than how maybe you felt about that, Sam, and others.
Yeah, it was interesting just because like it came through like Simone Biles withdraws for medical reasons, and you're like, oh, did she like hurt her ankle? Because like the last thing she did, she dismounted weird, or she landed weird on her ankle, and she didn't like stick
Right.
it. So like, is she hurt? And then press
I
conference
watched
came
that.
out. Yeah,
I watched that and I was like, "Oh my god, she's messed up, like, how terrible." But it's also like, you know, on some days I have a difficult time going out and running 5 miles. It's like, this is a person who's doing flips in the air and really the most intense environment that you could possibly be competing. But we're all critics at heart. I think that's just a part of, often who we are.
yeah, definitely. And then like we'll get into it, but the different stress factors that she's under is more than just a
Right.
regular Olympic athlete. Like when I took a bigger dive into it, because like I co-founded a mental health company, I can't just push her away because she
Right.
says she's she just cites mental health, and I say I don't agree with that. I wanted to take a deeper dive into seeing like what came into that, and the first thing that really came up is that Larry Nazer doctor. Am I saying his name right? I forget if I'm
Yeah,
saying it
yeah,
right.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was the team doctor for 18 years, and he sexually abused hundreds of girls and women in the U.S. gymnastics field, and Biles was one of those. And she said it's impossibly difficult to relive those experiences, and it breaks her heart to think that she would that let me get the quote right. It's impossibly difficult to relive those experiences, and it breaks my heart even more to think that as I work towards my dream of competing in Tokyo 2020, I have to continually return to that same training facility where I was abused. That that's crazy. That's so much
That's
trauma
it's
just
so
in that.
heavy. Yeah, it is incredibly heavy to just listen to you read that quote. I think is incredibly heavy. I think most of us wouldn't want to have to relive a past trauma and experience that's served as an obstacle for my own health and well-being. I don't know anyone who'd be like, yeah, let me go back to a place where I experienced something really traumatic and different forms of abuse. And I think it's something that we as a culture try to disengage from. I think we actually try to separate ourselves and move away from it. We don't want to believe that someone else had to go through something like that, especially someone that plays such an important role. And I think it's one of the reasons that I'm so happy that she decided to advocate for herself and take care of herself and her mental health, is that it's an example for everyone that you don't have to re-experience and go through things that you don't want to, especially if it's impacting your ability to enjoy a sport and compete at a level where you're really comfortable with that. I think the challenge with what Simone Biles has dealt with and will continue to deal with, as is others with a history of trauma and mental health as well, is that you can't see it. Like, it's not like a physical injury where, my goodness, if she was competing and broke her ankle or broke her knee, everyone would be very supportive and be like, my goodness, I'm so sorry, how devastating. But it's like, for some reason, and not just for a number of there's a number of different reasons that play into it, but it's like we don't want to believe that someone's struggling internally, and because we can't see it, it's hard for us to connect with it.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
Yeah, and then there was a case where like something similar like this happened in a past Olympics, and the
Mhm.
gymnast was like, I don't feel good. I don't think I should compete. And her coaches like forced her to compete, and then
Right.
she did like a flip and she like broke her, I think, her tibia,
Connect.
and then yeah,
Well, wasn't it? I thought it ended up
it might
being a
have been multiple.
quadriplegic.
Yeah,
I think she
yeah.
ended up
Her
being a quadriplegic because
she
she
broke
broke
her
some.
tibia and
Right.
then played on it or performed on it, and then
Exactly.
that caused her to be a quadriplegic. And yeah, so I think like if Biles didn't quit, like who knows what would have happened if her coaches would have forced her to do it, or if people didn't let her say, hey, my head's not in the right place, like something terrible could have happened to her.
When people feel pressure to do something they don't want to, it can create so much angst and other problems for that person later on that are challenging, because again, we see her as this athlete and we experience her life in these small moments, moment from moment to moment when she's competing and when it's being broadcasted. But we also, she's not returning to our home. We're not having to deal with the other residual impact and consequences of forcing someone to compete when they don't want to,
Yeah.
which again is part of the reason why I was so relieved that she made that choice. For me, it wasn't even, I didn't even second guess it. I was like, good for her. I was really happy. It was like, I hope that she did. And it's painful because it's not an easy decision that she makes, because I imagine there's a part of this where she feels like she's letting friends, family, colleagues, her training mates down. Um, but one of the things that's also been really wonderful is the amount of support that she's gotten from her colleagues, and people agree. People really believe, as many people are saying, like, this is the wrong decision, this is selfish, you took someone's spot. She's also in a position where she's hearing from other people this was the right decision.
And her
And it's
teammates
great
said it
that,
too. Her teammates were supportive
right.
of her, and they got silver instead of gold, like presumably because they didn't have the best gymnast in the world performing at her best. They won silver instead of gold, and they still supported her in her decision, which was great to see.
Right, absolutely. And how wonderful is that for her to experience that type of support, because I think culturally in America we are seeing a shift, and it's unfortunate that this shift is being moved by such an intense experience. But what a leader for everyone to really put herself in a position where she's not just been a leader from a professional and athletic standpoint, but to be a leader and advocating for yourself and taking care of yourself is just something that, it's few and far between is that experienced, as you had mentioned earlier, as I read, if Tom Brady or LeBron James quit because they were struggling with mental health, like, there'd be a lot of backlash to that. People wouldn't really understand that. And I'm so thankful that there are people out here like Simone Biles who are willing to advocate for themselves and fight for their mental health, because I think it sets a really wonderful example for everyone else around them and who's struggling, to say like, you know what, like I'm gonna take the day off of work because I feel like it's in my best interest.
Yeah. Do you think it would have gone any different if LeBron said he didn't want to compete in the finals, or Brady said he didn't want to compete in the Super Bowl? Would there be the same sort of reaction, or would people be a little bit more harsh on them?
I think people would be a lot more harsh because I think that, because we're not a very patient group of people. I think, and I think it's really challenging. We want to be entertained. We want to see people perform. We understand that people are, especially professional athletes, are getting paid large amounts of money to perform, and I personally would have loved if Tom Brady sat out in the last Super Bowl. I don't know about anyone else. But I feel like I'd feel okay if they made that decision because they know themselves, and that's the problem with mental health. It's not like treating a broken bone. You can't you can't see it. You can't see someone's mental health. The only thing we know about a person's mental health is what they choose to share. And so the truth is while we know that she's struggling with a number of different things, we actually don't know any of the facts. We could sit here and theorize and create some hypothesis about what's going on and why she made this decision, but we'll only know when she chooses to share with us. And so it's a call for all of us to move to a place where we live, um, and have a little bit of faith and trust, and where we give people the benefit of the doubt that when they're telling us something is wrong, that we believe it, because otherwise we can't see it. We have no idea besides what someone's telling us. And so I think it's a call for all of us to be a little bit more optimistic, supportive, to listen a little bit more, and to really trust when someone says something doesn't feel right, to really embrace that and to be there for them.
Yeah. Another crazy burden that we sort of skipped over, I just wanted to touch on real quick to kind of give her props for it. But another crazy burden she took on was that she's the only identified victim of Larry Nasser that's still competing, and she didn't retire because she didn't want USA Gymnastics just to brush that under the rug, and that she wanted to be there and not retire, so that she was still there and just didn't want the USA Gymnastics just to be able to let that go.
I can't even begin, and again, until Simone comes out and shares a little bit more with us, and that's at her discretion. I certainly hope she doesn't feel pressure to share or explain while she made this decision. I think that's one of the challenging things about the difference between a physical ailment and a mental health concern or problem, or when you're focusing on wellness and your own health. People understand, oh, it takes 6 months to heal from X, Y, and Z, like a broken leg or a broken bone, to get back to a place where you can work through rehab. We don't know how long it takes. When it comes to responding to trauma and a history of trauma, it can take a number of different periods of time and experiences for this person to get to a place where they feel like they've healed or worked through what they've needed to have worked through. But my goodness, she has and continuously has continued to expose herself to environments, situations, people, and experiences, that serve to remind her of what she had to go through. And I just think it's really hard for anyone to say, you should have worked through that by now, or you should be here, based on an allotted amount of time, knowing that it's going to be a different response for everyone that is navigating something like this.
Definitely. Yeah. And then just another fact, like there's tons of stress factors that we can touch on here, but another factor
Mhm.
that was possibly played a factor here was that she's on ADHD medication, and we know that because
Right.
there's a data leak or something like that, and like
Hmm.
there's a list of athletes using different medications, and the Olympics is really strict about what you can use, and they ban almost every ADHD medication, but you can get a waiver. I think Simone was like had a waiver for 2016, but Japan's being like extra strict about that, and the Russian doping scandal made it even more strict. So I couldn't find a real reputable source about if she was off her medication or not. But just from your experiences as an LPC and a counselor, how might someone who just was taken off any medications they're on, or maybe even just limited to them, how might that impact her or anybody really that gets taken off?
It can absolutely change your ability to navigate the things that you're used to dealing with. If you're used to taking a medication to help you with X, Y, and Z, and then that's taken away from you, it's going to impact you. It's not just about your mental state as well, but it can have a physical impact on your body and your brain in terms of how these different things are interacting with each other. And again, for me, it's a call to really move to a position of feeling like we should give people the benefit of the doubt. I can appreciate Japan having particular rules that they feel like are important to them, but a lot of those rules are grounded in believing that people are trying to take advantage of medications, which again reinforces mental health stigma and being able to get care and treatment for yourself. Like what every professional and athlete who's performing at the highest level needs to be completely substance free. It's like, no, medications help people focus. They help people navigate a lot of the challenges and obstacles that interfere with our ability to perform. And so there's been a handful of examples in people who have taken advantage and abused um, different rules and how medications are used to enhance performance. And it's unfortunate that the handful of people have created rules or caused rules to be put into place that have really interfered with someone who's struggling with something to get the right type of medication that allows them to function, which is really what that's about. Medication that people choose to take or that's prescribed to support them in addressing symptoms of their mental health, they're not abusing medications. And again, I think just as a culture, need to move to a place where we're really giving people the benefit of the doubt and believing that people are making these decisions not because they want to win, but because they want to take care of themselves. I mean, that's one of the things that we never heard Simone Biles say is, "I'm so sad that I had to leave because I want another gold medal."
Yeah.
We never heard her say that. All we've ever heard her speak of in relation to this topic is, "I just, I want to take care of myself. I want to be in a better position." Why? So that I can enjoy my sport, not so that I can win. I think winning is an indirect consequence of loving your sport, when your heart's in the right place. And so it's been really fantastic to have her be a role model for millions of people across the world and also challenging because the other side of that spectrum is listening to people criticize you and critique you and give you a hard time for something that many of which couldn't possibly understand or appreciate.
Yeah. And there's been like clips of her say like mount like you can lip read, and she says, "I don't want to be doing this anymore," even before the Olympics. So it's like these stressors might have been getting to her, and she might not have been being enjoying it anymore. If she thinks she's in danger of getting hurt or making her mental
Sure.
state worse, then it makes sense that she withdrawed, even though it is the Olympics and she's the best on
and
her team and in the world.
and we're certainly talking about her because because she's made this decision to withdraw to focus on her well-being. But the impact of COVID in participating in these Olympics has forced thousands of Olympians and athletes to have to isolate and to be away from family, and the toll that it takes to remove your support system to in order to put yourself in a position where you compete. It has implications, it has consequences. And I think it's something that as a viewer sitting on my couch watching this, like, it's just not something that I am attuned to because I want to see people compete, I want to be entertained. And as an American, I want to see the USA continue to perform well and win. And it's
Yeah.
just something that it's just hard for us to put our finger on. And we really need to, as a culture and as a community, open ourselves up to this idea that, you know, these athletes aren't superhuman and that they
Yeah.
struggle. And that we as a community who are watching them and being entertained by them and rooting for them also need to be there for them when they're struggling, not just in the times of when they're experiencing, victory or gold or whatever that might look like.
Yeah. And we saw that with Paul George in the NBA bubble too. He
We
said he
did.
was playing horribly, and he said like his mental health isn't there, and he got even probably worse of a reaction
He
than
did.
Simone Biles is getting right now. And he like right now, like the media and kind of public perception is coming around to Simone withdrawing, but that really never happened for Paul George. He got
Right.
really, really toasted in the media for
He did.
saying
And
that he's
and
bad, he doesn't have it in the bubble.
and how unfortunate, because really all that does is communicate to other people who are struggling is that you either shouldn't be struggling or B, shouldn't be talking about it. And again, that's what makes what Simone Biles did so impactful, because really what she did is set a precedent that it's okay to take care of yourself and it's okay to address your mental health. And it's okay to make yourself a priority and to not always be giving to other people.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything to the case of Paul George versus Simone Biles and male mental health stigma and things like that? Do you think there's anything to the
I
reactions they've
think
gotten?
I think certainly really what we're talking about is male versus female in relation to talking about mental health. And so I definitely think there's some gender things in relation to that. I think both have experienced tremendous amounts of criticism. I think a part of the difference is feeling, and I could be wrong, um, you know, Simone Biles' competitors, her teammates have been unbelievably supportive. And I'm not sure that Paul George got that same type of support from other NBA
True.
players who maybe haven't experienced mental health. And I don't think that has anything to do with male versus female as much as it has to do with and it could actually be playing a role as we're talking about it. But um, I think people who perform at high levels are expected to perform regardless and to work
Yeah.
through whatever they need to. And um and I'm not a high performing athlete, and we all struggle with different things, and I think it's important for all of us to ground ourselves in the space of believing that we can advocate for ourselves
Yeah.
and that we should be taking care of ourselves. And it's unfortunate that people like Simone Biles and Paul George have had to put themselves in positions where they're serving as these additional role models, and they're not just role models in relation to the sports that they're performing, but they're role models in relation to really putting themselves in the spotlight of feeling like they're addressing mental health. Michael Phelps is another athlete who's talked very openly about his mental health as well, and has received criticism. And so I really think it depends on who you surround yourself by, and how you navigate taking care of yourself. But it's certainly not an easy thing for anyone to put themselves in a position to be criticized. And again, I can't be more thankful for someone like Simone Biles and Paul George or anyone else who said, my health is more important than the sport that I love. And that in order for me to enjoy this sport, I'm going to have to take care of myself and take a step back from that.
Yeah. And it's saying like we can make a whole different podcast on athletes and their
Right.
mental health things, but like Dak Prescott too, I think his brother died or something like that. And he said he
Mm,
was depressed for a while. And then people were questioning whether he can be a good leader because he can get depressed. And that was just like
right.
a pretty ridiculous storyline for a while there. That like Dak Prescott couldn't be a good leader in a locker room because he gets depressed when something tragic happens.
And I think about this, how many people out there, and if you're listening to this, how many people out there don't feel like they can take a day off of work because
Yeah.
they're not even physically well, let alone experiencing mental health symptoms. And there really is this pressure to perform regardless of what it is that you're doing. And so, you know, again, I can't thank Simone Biles enough for putting herself in a position of setting the stage of, you need to take care of yourself, and you need to make your health a priority, knowing that A, you're not going to perform the way that you want to, but B, it's just more important. Your well-being, your health, your life is more important than the activities that you're choosing to engage in, work related or otherwise.
Yeah. And another stress thing that she might have had that might have had an impact on her is that the Olympic Committee, the International Gymnastics Federation, devalued her signature moves because nobody else can do it. Like you're the greatest in the world, and
Right.
you can do things other people can't do. And the
I
this
don't
committee
understand
said
that.
that it's no longer worth this many points because we don't
Yeah.
think anybody else can do it. That's a little bit crazy, and that would get in my head. Like now I got to change my whole routine and the skills I plan to do
Yeah, let me be
because
a little
these,
bit better at doing more basic things like I work
yeah,
out than excelling and growing the sport. And I don't know any other sport, or I haven't come across any other sport that would agree to that, right? It would be like
you're like LeBron,
asking
you're too good at dunking. Your dunks are one
you're
point
not
now.
allowed to do, yeah. Yeah, that's a perfect example. And again, it's really unfortunate that someone who's worked so hard to be at such a high level and perform better than anyone else has had to go through what she's gone through, both in terms of the abuse that she experienced as a result of that, um, the abuse of that physician, um, in addition to what she's had to endure as a result of pulling out of the Olympics.
Yep. And kind of those three big stressors that we mentioned kind of all play into this thing that gymnasts called the twisties. And a lot of trainers and coaches are saying that these twisties are why it was smart for her to withdraw. And she said, and Biles herself said that she had the twisties and posted videos of her dismounting things weird or bad for her. Looked pretty good to me, but probably not to her. But the twisties is a term in gymnastics where where you have a mental
Right.
block and you lose track of your position in midair. So like in other sports, you're not completely there mentally. Like you might strike out 3 times in a game, and people will be like,
Right.
"Ha, there's your hat trick," or 4 times, "There's your golden sombrero." But if you're not there mentally in gymnastics, you could land on your neck, and like that one girl did, be a paraplegic or quadriplegic, and really
I
hurt
think,
yourself.
yeah. I mean, I think that I like that she made that decision because physically she could have gotten
Hmm.
hurt. Like there's a physical consequence if she chose to continue to engage. And I don't want to focus too much on that because the truth is your mental health is important because your mental health is
Yep.
important. Your mental health isn't just important because there's a physical consequence that you could get hurt. Your mental health is important because you're a person and you're a human. And I think it's really important for us as a culture and as a community to move away from feeling like these people need to be superheroes. And that at the end of the day, Simone Biles is a person with a family, with aspirations and dreams that extend beyond just being an Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah.
It's really a call for all of us to really just start valuing how we feel about ourselves and how we take care of ourselves,
Yeah.
despite the fact that there are absolutely real life consequences and physical consequences to not addressing your mental health.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, that pretty much is the extent of what I know of this situation. Obviously, we can't know all of it because we're not inside her head and we're not there
Right.
in Tokyo and talking to everybody. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you're not may he who's a elite athlete going through a bunch of
Hmm.
traumas cast the first stone, I guess, in criticizing Simone Biles for withdrawing from the Olympics. I don't think there's many people out there with her level of skill and who has experienced the amount of traumas and adversities that she has
Right.
that are criticizing her.
What a role model. What a role model for all of us. And again, so thankful for her and what she's been able to do, not just for that sport, but for all of those others that participate in the sport and in any other sport, because she really has set a precedent that you're important as a person, not just because you're a high performing athlete.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
been
I
wonderful.
think I think we covered it. Any last thoughts on this and athlete mental health in general and importance of it, just not physical, but in general? Any, I guess, just any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
Take care of yourself and make yourself a priority. You're important, and you're not important because you excel and are excellent at a sport or an activity or anything academic related either. Take care of yourself because you're a person, and you matter. And I guess that would be my final thought. And I'm just very thankful that she's set a precedent and a tone that you matter as a person. And I know that this hasn't been. I can only imagine that this hasn't been easy for her. And I'm just really thankful that she's had the courage to step out and make this decision for herself.
Awesome. All right. I think that's all we got. Thank you, Alex, our
Thank you,
resident
Sam.
clinical director, LPC. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. And we're planning on doing these a little bit more frequently. I know we've been on a break for a minute, but we're kind of back.
Take care, everyone.